Welcome to the Next Step Recovery podcast. We call this More Than Recovery because addiction is so much more than just getting clean from our addictions, our strongholds. It's really finding our purpose in life, and that's what we're here for each and every day. I like to say that we have three purposes here at the Next Step Recovery podcast. The first purpose is to encourage people, to encourage those who are struggling in their addiction or just in life. It doesn't have to be an addiction. It could be anything. So we want to encourage you. Number two, we want to educate you. We want to help you help other people. We want to help you help others. And then finally, we want to expand our reach. We want to expand our impact. We want to expand our partners. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to a great show. All right. Hey, it's great to have my wife back on the More Than Recovery podcast, and I don't think she likes doing this, but I twisted her arm to
I'm the fill-in.
You're not the fill-in. You're not. You know, I stated at the beginning when we started to do these podcasts that they were not all going to be about addiction recovery or mental health issues, but we were going to cover a variety of topics. So I did twist Cecilia's arm to come back and talk to us about parenting. And a topic that never gets old because we're always having babies and we're always parenting and the culture is always changing and there's always challenges. But right now we're grandparents and we're grandparents. We have two grandchildren. Both are, one just turned 2 and one's about to turn 2. One's a little girl and one a little boy. And so we've moved from the parenting, still parenting, but into the grandparenting. Mm-hmm. And which one is more enjoyable?
Oh, by far, grandparenting.
Why is that?
They're just, you can give them back. They're just more fun.
You can spoil them. So you can give them back?
Yeah. You can spoil them.
Right. You can do everything you wanted to these kids that we didn't do to ours and then give them back. And, and you still feel like you've accomplished something because you were able to care for those children for a while and, well, their parents got a break or went to work or all those things. So anyway, our topic today is parenting, and Cecilia and I have raised 3 children: Kendall, our oldest daughter, and then Andrew, our son, and then Mary. And she just graduated from college and is married. She graduated back in June, got married in June. We graduated in May, got married in June. So. And I think all of our children kind of did that. They graduated from college and then got married right away, which, you know, I was happy to see that happen. Because,
absolutely. Yeah.
Get them out of the house, right? Yeah. You get them off the payroll. And now we're empty nesters. We're empty nesters, but we often have kids and grandkids over the house. So I asked Cecilia a couple of things the other night. We were talking about this. And I said, I want to approach this conversation in a couple of ways. The first of all, I said, and I'm going to read this to you. I said, Cecilia, I need you to talk to me about raising children. And this is a broad range, right? From 0 to 18. And obviously raising children from the time they're born to they're 5 or 6 years old to the time they're 12 to the time they're 18, it's all different, but we don't have that much time. So from 0 to 18, and then from 18 to 22, there's a shorter window, like the college years. And then from, 22 on, after they graduated, got married, parenting from those, what's the perspective or what's the approach to parenting at that point? And then in those years, in each category, in each block of time, what were your priorities? What were your challenges? I say our challenges, our priorities, and what was most rewarding about each of those stages of parenting. So Cecilia, I'm going to kind of turn this over to you. So, when we were raising our children from 0 to 18, from the time they were born to the time they went away to college, they graduated from high school, what were your priorities during those years?
We were, I think, more in a unique situation than the general population, with you being military, being gone a lot, left me home to raise them, take care of them. The priorities then were definitely having them in church, one of the bigger priority, not bigger priorities, but one of the big priorities also was making sure we found good schools wherever we were. We moved every 3 years that had the same curriculum for them. Just when our kids were growing up, homeschool wasn't as popular as it is now.
Right.
If I had to do it again, I probably would have homeschooled them. However, we didn't have that, just didn't have the resources available to us. So finding them a good school that they could move from one school to another school and still have the same level of learning the same things was a priority. With you being gone, obviously, it was the priority was having to be mom and dad at the same time.
Right.
We did not have the luxury of FaceTime, really of a lot of internet at that time. It was one phone call a week. Up until probably close to your retirement, we had email by then, but it was just prioritizing our day to day as to activities and schoolwork and sleep and my sanity.
Yeah, your sanity. We were talking the other day and about this, and you said you had to pick your battles.
Yeah.
Right. When I was gone, and I could be gone for a month, I could be gone for 3 months, I could be gone for 6 months, and sometimes it was short notice. We just didn't know. And so you stated to me, you just had to decide which of those battles was worth fighting and which of those battles was not worth fighting.
Yeah. And that can sometimes be a challenge for any parent.
Right. Yeah. Even non-military families, which battles are you going to fight with your children? Which battles are you just going to let them learn the lesson the hard way? Maybe let the natural consequences, and you got to be careful with that.
Sure.
And so, and then certainly, what those things that you were going to, and I think it was important that you had to develop as a military parent or not, right? You have to develop a good support system.
You do.
And I think you find a great support system in church.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing military families do not have, most of them, are the grandparents there to pick up the slack when one of them is gone. We did not have that available to us, so it was important either through our military family or our church family to really have that support system in place.
Right. And it's in today, the challenges in today's society is most parents are both working. For the most part, you didn't work.
Yeah.
When I didn't have,
I like to say I was, I didn't have the challenge of the financial side of being a single parent.
Right. You didn't. Yeah, you were a single parent most of the time, or a lot of the time, but you didn't have the financial challenge of that.
Exactly.
Right. And so in today's culture, even more so than, just 20 years ago, you're a lot of 2-income homes. So it's having grandparents around to help carry that burden, because childcare is hugely expensive.
Absolutely.
It's I just don't see how it's even almost how it's economical. So, so great insights into that 0 to 18, keeping your children in church, Christian camps, right? Keeping them in camp, great time, listening to your children, just listen, we always want to correct, but sometimes we need to spend some time listening.
I think we also made a priority of making sure they knew there were circumstances for the choices they made.
Right. And letting them see those circumstances a lot of times was important, not necessarily on them, but on other people, and exposing them to some things that, sometimes you may be like, oh man, And
that was one thing, I was going to bring up was we tend to want to shelter our kids, to be the helicopter parents. Today's society is probably more prevalent with that now, but I think there were some issues within our not so much immediate family that we exposed them to. We exposed them to the tough side of it, and from that, they got exposure to the world that we guided them through it.
Right. Not just exposure and leave them to themselves.
Exactly.
But, right. Exposure.
And I think that's important when they're in the house, especially that 0 to 18. You can't, they're going to get exposed to the world. No matter how much you try to shelter them. It is so important that when those issues come up, or when they see something they shouldn't, or when there's circumstances there that aren't ideal, it's okay as long as you tell them this is how we're going to handle it.
I remember asking our pastor when we were stationed in Hawaii, and our pastor had several daughters. He had a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And I went to him, and his kids were older. Most of his kids were older than ours. Some of them were the same age. And I went to him and I said, Pastor, how soon should I start talking to my 8-year-old daughter about sex? And he looked at me, and I was shocked when he gave me this answer. He looked at me and he said, how old is she? And I said, she's 8. And he looked at me and he said, you're too late.
Yep.
And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, she's already getting it in school from her friends. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, but she goes to a Christian school and she's 8 years old. He says, it doesn't matter. He said, you're too late. You need to have that conversation today.
Yeah.
He said, you need to start the conversation appropriately. And he walked us how to do that appropriately. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, they're getting it. So let me switch gears, Cecilia. So 0 to 18, 18 to 22, we get into the college years. Kendall, our oldest, went away to school for 4 years. Andrew, our middle child, our son, stayed home and lived in our basement. And then Mary went away to school. Yes. Right. And so, how parenting during that time, what was it like? How did it change?
This was the hard, I think, segment for me as far as, the podcast. And for me, it was, you want to see. I remember with Kendall, the first day we went up to Anderson College and dropped her off. That was the hardest.
Yeah.
She was the hardest to, I've always said, our goal is to raise them, to release them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the first time I knew, okay, Lord, this is yours. She's yours.
Starting the releasing process.
We drive away, we're all boo-hooing, and she calls. I think I left my laundry quarters in your car.
We had to go back.
So we had to go back. We're all a mess. We literally just kind of threw them at her and left.
Did a drive-by quarter toss. Yeah.
So the initial drop off was hard. The coming home, getting used to to her being gone. However, the priority for us was when she was home, it was still her house. It was still, we were still there. We made it, we just made an effort to make sure we had the time with her. Right.
And we're always a phone call away.
Yeah.
Right. I remember I had some of the best conversations with my children. Well, Andrew was always home. He didn't go away to school, but lived in our basement and pretended he wasn't there. And, at the time, but, yeah, and in that, because you release your kids to school, whether it's a Christian school or a secular school, there's temptations, there's freedoms, there's all those things that they're experiencing for the first time.
And I don't think, Todd, it matters whether they're going to a secular college, a Christian college, or whether they're even just going to work.
Right. Yeah.
That was the path our kids chose. But some kids are graduating from high school and they're in the workforce. And nowadays it's, whether it's a school or just an occupation that they decide to pursue.
Right. Yeah. You got to raise your children to live in this world, but not be conformed to this world. And that's what we tried to do. Even when they went away to college, it was still, even though they're 2, 3, 4 hours away from you, still having that influence. I always wanted to raise our kids knowing that I always wanted to have influence in their lives. You know, the Bible says that we're not to frustrate our children. We're not to treat them in such a way that we frustrate them, that we drive them to anger, that we drive them to rebellion. Because parents, a lot of times, by being overbearing and not allowing your children to make some decisions and make some mistakes. I always wanted my children to make mistakes in the home under my care. I wanted them to make a decision that I might disagree with.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to kill them. And then let them experience the consequences of that decision under my care. So later on as adults, I could always have influence in their life. I felt like that's one way I could always have influence in their life, because they knew that I was there for them, whether we agreed or not on something. And that way I could always keep the influence in their life, you know? So in college was the test of that. You know, when Andrew didn't go away to school, but at the same time, I wanted him to feel like that he was somewhat not under our care.
Right.
So he lived in the basement with a separate door, and he could come and go as he wanted. He just couldn't join a fraternity. That's what we told, because he went to Mercer University and wanted to join.
We made sure he had to come upstairs to eat.
Yeah, he had to come up for air, and he had to come up to use the bathroom.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so, but many times I would walk down in that basement, and he'd have a basement full of guys down there watching the football game, eating pizza, you know, and we wouldn't even know that he was having them over there. And we kind of told him, you know, we want you to treat this like you're away at school, because he chose, when he went to Mercer, we said, you can go to Mercer, you just can't live on campus. But we wanted to feel like he had that freedom, just like our oldest did, and just like Mary did, our youngest. So yeah, those college years, those 18 to 22, it's different parenting. It's you're still parenting. The phone is still there. You know, for this generation, the text.
I still think though, as a parent, though, you know, we had incidents, particularly with Andrew, where we felt like he'd been wronged by a professor. Right. And the mama bear in me still came out. It didn't matter the age. It didn't matter. You know, I wanted immediate resolution. I wanted something to be done. And I don't think that changes no matter the age of, you know, when they've been wronged or hurt. As a parent, you're still.
Yeah. I've shared with several people that Cecilia and I probably could be multimillionaires off of Mercer University right now if we had decided to take legal action against them.
Absolutely.
But we didn't. And literally we could have sued Mercer. So in that incident, you know, you're right. You're still parenting there, because that's a huge incident. Where,
and I had to, you know, be careful of how I reacted for Andrew's sake.
Right, because you didn't want to embarrass him.
I didn't want to embarrass him, but I was mad.
Yeah. And again, if anybody from Mercer ever listens to this, you've been blessed that we didn't pursue legal action. Yeah. And we didn't do that for our son's sake. Yeah. Because it would have been embarrassing to him. And so, but so finally, you know, here we are, you know, our oldest had been married for 8 years almost.
Hard to believe.
Yep, I know. Andrew and our middle has been married since 2018, so 6 years. And then our youngest has been married for 6 months, I think, and 7-8 months. And, you know, I was sharing with Mark earlier, who's running the camera behind the scenes here, that parenting is kind of like painting a picture, right? It's art. And for so many years, you painted that picture and you corrected and you just put the paint on the canvas, and maybe you messed something up and you had to fix it or correct it, and you know, but you knew what you wanted that painting to look like when you got done, right?
Absolutely.
You start parenting with an end in mind. My end in mind, I think our end in mind was children who love God.
Absolutely.
Children who love their spouse. Children who raise a godly family. Children who work hard. Children who never quit. Children have an entrepreneurial spirit, right? Those were kind of the paint. We knew that was the end painting, right? When we got done. And now I think we're at a point where we can step back now somewhat and kind of look at the painting and go, okay, And it's a little more enjoyable now.
It is. And it's only by God's grace. I mean, that we have 3 children that are, a lot of what you described. I think for me, my biggest joy right now is just seeing them be parents.
Yeah, right. And helping them parent.
We did make it a priority.
We don't tell them what to do with their kids.
No, but we did make it a priority when time came for you to take another assignment or to retire.
Right.
We, this was probably a turning point, I think, in our whole parenting journey. Was we had, I think, a 9th grader.
Right.
We had a 7th grader, and we had, I don't even know, 3rd grader maybe.
Right.
And the Air Force said, "Okay, it's Tom. You've got to make your choice now." And we sat down and we talked, and it had, they were at critical times in their lives. Do we uproot them and move on, or do we say we're gonna stay around and we're gonna finish out the journey here?
Right. Do we end my Air Force career here for the sake of family?
Yeah.
For the sake of raising children, which was more important? Was my Air Force career more important, or was raising children? And
along with that, it also, as they got older, we made the determination too that, we did not have and I don't want to call it a luxury, but in some ways it is, to have grandparents around to call and say, "Hey, I've got a doctor's appointment. Can you watch the kids?" We did not have that. And that was, I think, one of the priorities we have set.
Yeah, is to be there.
As a family, is to be there for them, for the grandkids, and be able to be a big part of their lives.
Yeah, and that was a deliberate decision on our part, and I think for us it was the right decision. For other people they make other decisions, but yeah, I think for parenting, in this later stage in life is you're still parenting. My parents still parent me, right? And you're always parenting, but it's at a different level. You're more of an advisor. You're more of a sit back and you pray. A lot of praying. And I don't tell our children what to do, how to do it, how to raise their kids, where to go to church, when to go. They make those choices, and then we support. And we're just there. We're supportive in whatever they decide to do.
Now, I will say with that, if we feel like they're making a decision that might be detrimental to their family,
sure, yeah,
we speak up, but it's still ultimately their decision.
Yeah, right, yeah. So we could go on and on and on about parenting, and maybe we'll do a parenting part 2, and maybe spend a little more time in each of those areas with specifics.
I do think we were fortunate in the time we brought our children up. We've got 2 grandchildren now. Social media is probably one of the biggest challenges that parents right now have to face.
Yeah.
I've listened to podcast after podcast from doctors, psychiatrists that have said the mental illness that it is producing with factors from social media is through the roof.
Yeah. And that would be another great,
cell phone use, social media. Right. It's all, it's those challenges. If I had to deal with those and you gone, at some point I probably would have caved.
Yeah. It's difficult. It is. And again, you choose your battles, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so great. Maybe that's another podcast topic. So anyway, thank you. Thank you for allowing, thank you, Cecilia, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Nobody's busier than this woman right here with her real estate and with her grandchildren. And so I appreciate you doing this today. Twisted her arm to do it. And again, if you need to get in touch with us, you have further questions about Next Step or about parenting, you can call my wife. But you can get a hold of us through www.ccsd.com. nextstepmen.org. And thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this has been beneficial. It's been a little bit broad, but I hope it's an encouragement to you. I hope it's been educational to you as well. And join us next time right here on More Than Recovery.